It's time. Squat setup. We could almost actually call this squat 101 because if you skipped everything you learned so far from squats and you just dialed into these 8 steps, these 8 beautiful steps we're about to give you, your athletes will get better, you will get better, and you'll probably have some extra athletes because they're looking so good out there the way they lift, getting stronger and not getting injured. So we're going to start with step 0, and then I'm going to walk through these 8 steps here without Brandon actually going through it, and then I'm going to run him through just so we can talk some clarity and some points on this. Step 0, we have this. We didn't want to call it step 1 because talking about it, we really wanted it to be a pre-step, right? So call it whatever you want, but we call it step 0. It's an alignment step. It's going to be true for deadlift, bench, and squat. Notice how I have the bar purposely crooked in the rack. A lot of athletes might actually grab the bar crooked. The bar might be straight and they go in crooked. We're talking all things alignment. You might even catch some misloaded plates sometimes if you pay attention. Look what Brandon does here. He's going to look left, right, left, whichever way he's looking. But I love the way he talks about it because it's like a little kid crossing the street. We're checking, we're checking, we're rechecking, we're rechecking. Slow down. You and your athletes must slow down during the setup. If I just gave him a big old whiff of ammonia and gave him the biggest flying back slap that I can in the gym, he's all jacked up. That's fine if you want to be an amped up lifter, but you have to learn to control that excitement or that aggression and know when to release it. Right here, rushing to the barbell to get it out, skipping these steps, I promise you, is not the place at all to utilize that. Wait until you're perfectly set up. Go ahead and get underneath the bar for me and then we'll have you dip back out. So Brandon's also paying attention to his feet, his head, his body in relation to everything alignment you can think of before we even start the setup. You can rest now. Come on out with us. So step number 1, once you've checked over everything you can think of, you should still not be amped up. We're not too excited here. It's our rib cage over pelvis position. We could call step 1 spinal alignment because we also want to add head position in. If I get the bar in here, I can brace and breathe and do all these steps, but I'm not in good position. I could even be in pretty good position, head included, but I'm here. Just because the rib cage over pelvis is there, bracing and breathing is there, that doesn't mean you are in good spinal alignment to pick up load. So most people, they're in decent position if they fix their head, but we have to close this open scissor. Get ready to brace and breathe. We won't have that optimal alignment if we're in any kind of a posterior anterior tilt as we've already explained. Step number 2. Everybody likes to talk about lats. Love them or hate them in bench and squat. You should probably be using them. Scapular depression is really important. It's not all about elbows. It's not all about scapular depression. Some coaches use the cue bend the bar or pull the bar into your back. That's perfectly fine, but you need to understand what you're doing. Scapular depression is not just my elbows. Notice how they're independent. I'm shrugged all the way up here, and I have 0 scapular depression. I can kind of engage my lats here. It's hard, so it's not elbows. We need the scapula to be seated correctly on the rib cage so that lat can tie in to the pelvis. We want shoulder blade controlled because where's the bar sitting on? Your upper back and your shoulders. Yes, elbows should be pointed to the best of your mobility directly to the ground, not tucked underneath and pointing out to you, not tucked behind pointing to your spotter. Once we have this, we can move on to our brace or IAP. It's a hot topic. Remember how to do it correctly. It's easy, 2 steps. Muscular brace. Brandon talks about this very well. Then we're going to breathe into that brace. Notice how you didn't see my chest rise. Brace. I lost that by reopening the scissor. It's never going to provide maximum intra-abdominal pressure. If I do that backwards, and breathe and then try to tighten down or get that expansion, it's a strategy. It works, but it's not optimal. Maximum brace, add the air, there's your IAP. From there, we should be in pretty good position already. Our alignment's pretty darn good. So let's check in with our feet. Root your feet. Yes, your feet are going to lose contact with the ground. So some people might think this is a premature step. But before you unrack and get ready to execute, it's the calm before the storm right here. This is your last chance to check in with your feet. Now, if you're prone to knee and ankle issues, or you're stagger stepping and unrack, there's a lot of wear and tear going on here, but you're allowing your body to not be in optimal position. If you then step out and try to clean things up, you are just in a suboptimal position. The likelihood of you being in another one is pretty great because you were just there. When you root your feet, if that's your last chance to fix some of these positional flaws from here down, you're more likely to carry those over when you walk out. Step number 5, true for deadlift and bench as well. If you created a lot of global tension, we'll say how to do it here in a second in the squats, but if you created a lot of global tension, this step kind of just happens naturally. But we have to highlight it as an actual step. In this squat series, it's step number 5. Because once I'm rooted, you'll probably see from Brandon that just by him rooting his feet, he naturally gets some glute and quad engagement and starts pressing into the floor. The bar is probably pressing out of the rack. Now, if we put 400, 500, 600, 700 pounds on here, it may not pop out as easy. He might have to try to push it out. But anything below 400 pounds, I guarantee with him, is going to pop out before he's ready. And that's the point to talking about step number 5. You've created global tension, your feet are rooted, you start to press into the floor. That doesn't mean you just pop out and wiggle around. If the bar comes up, let's say I'm here, I'll move up about an inch. Let's say the bar came up just by me starting to engage. I don't like this position, I'd rather be here. Ooh, and then I'm gonna stand. My point is, you do not finish the unrack until you are ready. Just because global tension and lighter weights made the barbell move up, you do not have to continue on with it. Not so important for a 1 rep max on the platform, because it's probably going to be heavy and you're going to feel your optimal position. Nope, not there. Oh, there it is. And you're going to finish standing up. But how many warm-up sets are your athletes doing that day? How many warm-up sets did they do for 6 months in prep, 3 months in prep? How many actual working sets did they do? Perfect time to practice with lighter weights because it can be hard to feel with a true max. All right, we're almost there. Step number 6, the magical 3-step walkout. You know why. We don't want 10, we don't want 5. Keep it clean, keep it slow. Brandon's going to show an excellent example of such. Now, once we've walked out those 3 steps, we say reinforce everything. This is a good coaching moment for you coaches, and for lifters, a great learning moment to feel where things are breaking down. We say everything because you should really just go back through those steps. Did I open up? Brandon showed earlier. Did I take a large step and open up this? If I did, okay, not ideal, but fix it. Don't just accept this, fix that position. Can I engage my lats a little bit more? Did I lose them in the walkout? Can I brace harder? Do I need more air? Oh. Are my feet still rooted? If so, jump on to step number 8. Execute the lift. If not, stop. Fix the problem. Do not proceed. And again, I've felt this multiple times. My head coming forward or a little loss of position, and I don't just fix it and move on. I think about that. How can next time during my steps, because it was great when I stood up, all that I did was this, so why did I lose my brace? There's the coaching moment. There's the learning moment for the athlete. If we can start to make those deviations smaller and smaller and smaller, pretty soon we are squatting like that refrigerator and we look really, really good. There's no more positional degradation, or it's so small it's hard to even tell. So once you've double checked everything, again, the lift is pretty much done. Execute. Now, holding position, maintaining tensions, is not always easy if the weight's very heavy or you're fatigued on reps. But really, as we talk, if I'm in perfect position, the only thing left to do is hold it and go down and up. If you're not in perfect position, I promise some stuff's going to go on and that squat's going to be a lot harder to maintain. Brandon, do you have anything to add to these 8 steps before we show them with a little more detail?
I think that about covers it.
Cool. Let's see it under the bar. All right. Step 0, alignment. We're looking left, we're looking right, we're paying attention to everything. When we do step under the bar, regardless of how you get there, we like the bar to be over midfoot. We haven't started the setup yet. This is your last chance to check. And probably the only time I'll be okay with a lifter looking down if they fix their head in their spinal position. So guess what step number 1 is? Rib cage over pelvis. Give me a, big anterior tilt. Fix that for me. But remember, it's not just that. Fix that head position. Boom, our last chance for optimal spinal alignment. Here, we want to tie this big lat in to this thoracolumbar fascia attaching to the pelvis. That gives us more stability, but it's also depression of the scapula. Next step, we get to brace. You can't see it well here with the shirt on, but if I tactile cued it, I promise it's there, very strong. We're going to breathe into that brace. Step number 2 of this step, finishing your IAP. From here, Brandon's going to root his feet. You'll see some quad activation. Look what happened. I told you were going to see it. It's already there because he has so much tension created through the brace, the feet, the optimal spinal alignment. The bar started to come up. So that's when he decided he was in good position and he decided to unrack. 3-step walkout. It should look like this. Step, hold. Lateral step and back, hold. Lateral step, hold. I encourage you to think about it that way and maybe even say that to your athletes until they learn to slow the heck down. Reinforce everything. We're thinking head, rib position over pelvis, brace, breathe, root. Are my lats good? If so, execute. Rack it, shake it out. We'll walk through one more time and we'll turn it over to Brandon. Just like the bench press, if you do that right, that's a lot of work, even with a plate. You should be generating a lot of force, a lot of global tension in the body. All right, alignment's there. We know we're in a good position. That includes feet under the bar. We can look at our feet, our last chance, because now we're going to start our setup. Rib cage over pelvis position. That includes head. We're going to engage those lats and depress the scapula. We're going to brace. We're going to breathe into that brace, not into our chest. We're going to root our feet. That finishes tension. Brandon was already in a good position, so he went ahead and executed the stand all the way. 3-step walkout. Look at the patience in those steps and how stable this body looks. I understand it's only 135. It looks the same when Brandon has 5, 6 more 100 pounds on his back. From here, we're going to reinforce everything. If you feel any movement, learning moment, and then hard work is done. Execute. Boom. 3 white lights. Confetti falls from the sky. Your friends are happy. Huge PRs happen. And you looked really good while doing it. It's one of my favorite parts about teaching this to people we meet at seminars and clients. You know, we all want to be the strongest athlete we can be. We want to be the strongest version of ourselves, maybe a better way to say that. But we've got so many compliments from judges and other lifters and friends and family members like, wow, so-and-so looked really good out there. I saw some other people and they were moving around a lot. Like, they may not be the strongest person yet. They didn't even win, but they looked like they had fun. They looked so good. They looked like a pro. They looked like they knew what they were doing. That's one of my favorite compliments to get as a coach, to get it all the time, is wow, that athlete looked good. It doesn't matter how much they lifted. They were like, you've been working with them for 3 months, 6 months? They squatted before though, right? A beginner? How did you make them do that? Simple step. We take away their movement faults. We take away the positional degradation. We give them a setup that's repeatable. Brandon?
Yeah, it's pretty amazing how many people are just in disbelief with how much can be fixed with a improved unrack and walkout. I've had many individuals that just know they have something wrong with their bracing. They just know they have something wrong with their lat engagement. They've done all these drills, seen all these coaches to work on it, and they send me a video and it just shows the squat. And I say, hold up, before I give you any feedback, let me see how you walk down. Let me see the very start to you getting under the barbell. They send me it and the problem is very clear. Their unrack is horrendous. They end up going into posterior pelvic tone unrack. The walkout, the first step's too big. They have all these positional issues. And then by the time they squat, they don't have the opportunity to squat anywhere near optimal. They don't have the opportunity to actually stabilize their trunk anywhere near optimal. The list goes on and on and on. So with that being said, just by improving the unracked walkout and just by setting forth a cadence for them to follow every single time, the predominant amount of their faults go away. And I see this time and time again. So we can't overlook this setup. And by the way, everybody should have a cadence they go through for every single lift. I certainly do, and it's saved me as far as being consistent with my training or my patterns.
You know, something to add to that, just thinking about cadence of lifts, we could throw in a box squat, right? We're talking about setting up for 1 rep here. We showed execution of just 1 rep. Safety bar squat, or in our world, a transformer squat. You know, all these different squatting with chains, bands, you know, front squat, overhead squat, all these variations that you might want to provide your clientele. A lot of times I see lifters in comp prep, by the end of prep, they look pretty good in their walkout. And I'm like, I'm happy watching them on Instagram. They fix some of the stuff we've talked with them about, or I've seen them working on. I feel really happy for this athlete. The meet's over, and then they're doing back off sets at 8 for hypertrophy, or, you know, some leg press, supersetted with some safety bar squats, some lunges and box squats, whatever fun they're having. And I'm like, what happened to that athlete? They went from this nice position, up, hold, fix, execute a beautiful squat. It was heavy. Next thing you know, they got 225 on with some chains, swinging them around. They're like just blasting through box squats. The setup is the same. The reason I bring that up, the cadence should be the same. Your overhead squat might change a little bit, but you can imagine how a lot of these steps would be very similar in a strategic order. Get away from the overhead squat, switch to a front or a box squat, and there's not much at all that's going to be any different. The other important point to bring up here is when we're doing reps versus singles. Now, if I gave Brandon 20 reps at whatever pace he wanted to with 135 here, I would expect him, being a great athlete and an amazing coach, that it looks almost perfect. Probably not much positional degradation. If we tried the same thing with 400, 500 pounds, belted up, I would expect it to get a little sloppy at the end, and I would be okay with that because the amount of energy we're expending to move such a heavier load. So sometimes it's a challenging set of 5 or 8. We hate to say you should never lose position, but even great lifters squatting, you know, some real heavy hypertrophy reps, you're going to be exhausted and get a little hip wiggle, and you're going to be panting because you're out of breath if you just came from, you know, comp prep and you're doing 3s and 2s and 1s. 5s seem like cardio at this point in time, let alone 8. And I've been there. About rep number 6, you're holding it together and you feel the hips shifting and you tell yourself, oh, tighten it up, pull it together. You do, and you have to reclaim those positions. So remember, reinforce. At the top of a squat, if things are falling apart, you got a little forward on your toes on rep 2 of a heavy triple, a rep of 20 or a set of 20 or 8s, whatever the case may be, that's your opportunity to fix the fault before you continue. I just want to highlight that because we showed it here for singles. Most of powerlifting is spent outside of singles. Even if you're doing some conjugate type of programming, you spend more time warming up with reps than you do actual singles. All of your accessory and hypertrophy work is a lot more reps. So we showed a single. Do not let yourself fall apart, or your athletes fall apart, because they've had a great setup and walkout and movement, in meet prep and during those singles, and then as soon as they're out of contest prep or they have higher reps, they just don't care anymore and it falls apart. Anything to add, Brandon?
I think that about covers it.
All right, guys, let's jump onto the floor and look at the movement prep and how we make you move a little bit better now you've learned how to set up.